Morning guys, today we're going to be talking about our quadratic formula, and what the quadratic formula is just another way to solve a quadratic, as stated in the name. So we now have three different ways we can solve. We have factoring and using our zero product property, which I'm going to review in here. We also have completing the square. We also have our quadratic formula. Our quadratic formula helps us solve for x. Now, remember that x is our x-intercepts, it is our roots, it is our zeros. All of these three things mean the same thing, okay? So whenever I ask you to solve for x, I'm asking you for your x-intercepts, which is where it crosses that x-axis. I'm asking for your roots or your zeros. So our quadratic formula is x equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared, b in parentheses, minus 4ac all over 2a. Now, if I were to give you a normal assessment, if we were in the classroom, I would expect that you know this. So as you're going through these lessons, as you're using your quadratic formula, make sure you say it in your head and out loud so you can get used to that, because you'll be using it a lot next year in geometry. So we have x equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now, we are going to solve a quadratic. So we have y equals x squared minus 4x plus 3. If I asked you to use your zero product property, what I would first ask you to do is factor this. So you would make your ACB chart, you would end up with x minus 3, x minus 1 from your ACB chart. This is something we've already solved before, that's why I'm skipping some steps here. We would end up with x minus 3 is equal to 0, x minus 1 is equal to 0. This part is using your zero product property. We would add 3 to both sides. This would give us x equals 3, giving me one x-intercept of 3, 0. Over here, I'm going to add 1 to both sides, giving me x equals 1, giving me another x-intercept of 1, 0. Okay, so this is how we would solve this normally, by factoring, using our zero product property, and getting those two x-intercepts. Let's say that I want to take this same equation and I want to solve this now by using my quadratic formula. Okay, so now we are going to solve by the quadratic formula. The first thing I want you to do is state what your a, b, and c values are, okay, every single time. So a is the number in front of x squared, so it's 1 in this case. My b value is the number in front of x, which is -4. My c value is that constant on the end, and it's going to be that 3. Now, when you're stating your a, b, and c values, you never want to include any type of variables. These are just numbers, okay? What we're going to do with these numbers is we're going to plug them into our quadratic formula from the top. And this is going to tell us what x is going to equal. So x equals the opposite of b. Since b is -4, we're going to put a +4. Plus or minus, we need both of those, the square root of b, which is -4, squared, always in parentheses, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 3. All over 2 times a, which is 1. Okay, we're going to take this in steps and we are going to finish solving this. So we have 4 plus or minus the square root. Negative 4 squared is 16, positive 16. So we have 16 minus negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. Negative 4 times 3 is negative 12. So we have 16 minus 12 all over 2. We're going to keep simplifying this. Okay, now I want to simplify what's under my radical. That gives me 4 plus or minus the square root of 16 minus 12, which is 4, all over 2. We're going to simplify this even further. We know that the square root of 4 is a perfect square. So that gives me 4 plus or minus the square root of 4, which is 2, all divided by 2. Now, this creates 2 different equations for us. We have 4 plus 2 divided by 2, because we have the plus or minus. We also have 4 minus 2 divided by 2. In this, 4 plus 2 is 6. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So that tells me that one of my x values is 3. I have 4 minus 2, which gives me 2, divided by 2, giving me my other x as 1. This gives me 3, 0. This gives me 1, 0. And if we take a look back at our original problem here, when we factored this, we ended up with the same exact answers. Okay, you should get the same answers. Now, most of you are probably sitting at home and saying, well, why do I have to use a quadratic formula if I could just factor it? Now, sometimes we're going to get problems that are not factorable. And when we get problems that are not factorable, there's only 2 other ways that we can do it. Either completing the square, or we could go ahead and use our quadratic formula. So let's take something that is not factorable. Let's go with example B. We're going to do y equals x squared plus 4x plus 10. We're going to go ahead and we're going to use our quadratic formula for this. Remember, our first step every single time should be to state what our A, B, and C are. So A, B, C. I want to see this on all of your papers every single time. Remember, our A is in front of our x squared. In this case, it's 1 again. Our B is in front of the x. It's 4. Our C is that constant, which is our C term, and it's 10. Okay, I want to see this every single time. Remember, only numbers go here. No x squared, no x, nothing like that, just the numbers. So our quadratic formula from the top is the opposite of b. So we have x equals the opposite of b, so the opposite of 4, which is negative 4, plus or minus the square root of, in parentheses, 4 squared minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 10. All divided by 2a, which is 1. We're going to start simplifying this. This gives me negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 16 minus 4 times 1 times 10, so minus 40, all over 2. Now, we have to simplify what's under our radical still. So we have negative 4 plus or minus the square root of negative 24 divided by 2. Does anybody see anything wrong with this? Let's take a look at this negative 24. If I end up with a negative under a radical, we cannot simplify that. Cannot simplify. The reason is because we don't know how to simplify a negative under our radical. Right now, it's considered undefined, which means this just doesn't have any x-intercepts, which is perfectly fine. If I take a look at my graph, it might look something like this. Still a quadratic, just never touching that x-axis, which is okay. It would just be considered undefined or no solution.